Here we go. The first video, my ADHD story. So I thought what I'd do for the first video is just to tell you my story, and I'll start with a little bit about my childhood, and then adulthood, and how ADHD has affected my adulthood, and what I've done about it, I guess, and my story. And my goal really is, when I started investigating ADHD for myself, I basically just watched loads of YouTube videos, and some were really helpful, some weren't so. And I thought, well, out there, and if it helps people, it helps people. But also, I guess there's a little bit of a personal thing in that I'm, a bit of a diary for myself. It's sort of interesting to look back and stuff like that. So, but first I'm going to have my first coffee sip of the morning, which is truly the most amazing thing on the planet. The same for the rest of the day with my 2 pots of coffee. Literally, I have 2 pots of these a day. Which my partner, who's fairly neurotypical, is just like, I just don't know how you do that. And if you're like me, then the weird thing is it has very little effect. But I can't manage without it. Anyway, there you go. I guess the point is, I'm not on medication at the moment, and I'm free flowing this video, so I'm really gonna have to try and stay on task. But you can put this on double speed, which is exactly what I did with most videos, speed. And then again, neurotypical people are like, what the hell? And I was like, yeah, step up on double speed, or else I'll just get distracted, bored, or whatever. So my childhood started when I was born, and I was a child of the 70s, which some of you will be, I think, in the 70s. Wasn't that like World War I or something? And then other of you maybe watching this will be like, the 70s. I wish I was born in the 70s. But yeah, the 70s were pretty cool, I think. And I grew up in there you see my white hair. Clearly, I'm from the 70s. I grew up in a sort of fairly rough part of the Midlands, as you'll probably see from my accent, or hear from my accent. And I grew up in a council estate in the Midlands, just outside Dudley. And I say Dudley, not Dudley. It was a pretty cool time, mobile phones, lots of skinheads, lots of like strike like gangs and stuff like that. And I was a pretty wild child, as you can imagine. What I say you can imagine, not that I'm so wild now, but I mean, as an HD kid in the 70s. And I was in my own little world for most of my childhood, I think. I really was. And I was always seen as like the loud, hyperactive, slightly stupid kid. And I just grew up thinking I was quite stupid. I also got diagnosed with ADHD when I was, dyslexia when I was a kid as well. And I always wonder how, things, they both influence each other. And what I mean by that is, like, if you are struggling to read and you've got ADHD, which means that if you struggle with something, you get really bored really easily and easily distracted. So then you don't learn to read and write. So I sort of feel as though those two things together were, rough. So when I was a kid, also, my mom used to be like, why do you always talk so loud? Why are you always like shouting, running around? And she just took me to a doctor, thinking, is there something wrong with his hearing? Which I think is quite telling again, how so many ADHD kids are really loud and shout all the time. And I noticed that with my own children who've got ADHD. They're a bit older now, but when they were young, they were just like constantly shouting. I was like, why are you shouting? You don't need to shout. No, I did exactly the same. It's quite funny. And I think I just typically, I still in school, I couldn't like constantly. The thing is, I think I was quite an intelligent kid, and I found a lot of my school reports, and so many of my school reports say that I was nice, I was polite, I was like kind, I looked after people, I was empathetic. Again, is a really typical trait, isn't it, where you have this really strong sense of justice and morality. and but I just couldn't concentrate. And some of my reports are like, Paul could just like learn to focus more, he would achieve so much. And I think that's really true. So I went through school and I left school literally with not one do you know what? I had one qualification, and my one qualification was in sewing. Amazing. Didn't do much with that, but I loved sewing as a kid. Um, Really frustrating to me because I felt I was quite intelligent, or intelligent enough. And when I was really interested in the subject, a lot of people find this, when you're really interested in the subject, you can like become best and learn about it and find out everything about it. And I did, so interesting subjects. I could really hold my own and engage, be intelligent. But if I wasn't interested, that was it. I was like, thinking in other things, and I just looked silly or stupid. And the other thing, of course, is that ADHD people will just say things out loud, whatever's in their brain, which can often make you just look stupid or fool or insensitive, which I wasn't at all. Yeah, I left school with no qualifications. ADHD wasn't really a thing. It was more like just hyperactive. It was like state numbers, and really frustrated. Yeah. So then going into the workplace was pretty much exactly the same. Leaving, I left. I went to drama school, went to music school. Again, I had sort of, I didn't achieve a great deal because I was, getting bored so easily and frustrated and all that. Jobs. And I had an amazing opportunity to go and do a university course. So this was when I was about my early 30s. Because of some of the work I was doing, I actually got some funding, placement. I think, I don't think all my college fees were paid, but I think quite a lot of them were and stuff. This opportunity to do my degree. And I think I was like 3 marks for first, which I was really angry about because it was basically a second marker that downgraded one of my essays. And I think that was quite unfair. But anyway, so I should have had it first. In my brain, I've always had it first. So I had a really good qualification, one of the highest in my class at the time, which was amazing. And a few years later, I then went on to do a master's, which I struggled more with. And I think that was my dyslexia, to be honest. But so I had a really good BI and a master's, but that was later on in life as a mature student, where I suspect my ADHD calmed down an awful lot, where I was able to focus a lot more. Or more, I learned the skills to be able to do that, which I think is just as important. And as you know, we often learn these skills without realizing it. So at that point, I still didn't really know what ADHD was, and I didn't associate it with myself or anything like that. I just thought I was like a bit eccentric, a bit out there, a bit wild. My brain don't work like everyone else's, but it's just the way it is. And then when I was doing my master's, I did my master's in education psychology. And one of the lectures was going through things like dyslexia, autism and stuff like that. And there was a lecture on ADHD. And they went through the characteristics of a typical child with ADHD. And at the end of that section of the lecture, I was almost in tears, and I was just staring at the lecturer going, "You've basically just described my childhood." I was like, that's me. And I decided to do my whole master's. So one of the things that they said when I was doing my master's was like, you can either do a whole wide range of subjects. So you can do an essay in autism, you can do an essay in this, you can do an essay in that, or you can really focus down and become almost an expert in one subject. So of course I did ADHD. I decided to use that year, and I did all my all my essays and my final, my sort of final 10,000, whatever it was, 10,000 words, something like that. I've had to, I think, something like that, on ADHD. And it was really for myself and for my children as well, actually. So those characteristics in my children. And but the problem was at the end of that, I was like, well, what can I do with this? I've just got this information, because at the time, I didn't know, and whether the law changed in between, I didn't know whether or not, well, I didn't believe that adults could have ADHD medication. And one of my lecturers, they said, at 18, it just stops. You don't get any more medication. And that was a few years ago. And I think it's only changed since then. So at the end of it, I was just like, okay, there's nothing I can do with this. I just need to learn skills and how to manage. At least I know what it is now and understand what it does, what it is in the brain, all this type of stuff. I want some more coffee. See, I need at least 5 cups of coffee. It's out anyway. And then, okay, so fast forward about years or something. I sat there with a friend of mine, went out for coffee, and my friend was saying, adult friend, I was saying, I'm going to be diagnosed, I've been diagnosed with ADHD and I'm looking at getting medication. And I was like, you can't get medication. My friend was like 25. And I was like, I was told that you can't. She's like, well, you can. Anyone can get medication for ADHD. So it's it's a condition you can get medication for, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. And so I investigated this and I found out, yeah, you can. And I was like, how long have I been going knowing that this is a condition I clearly have, self-diagnosed, I know, but it's really obvious. And I could have had access medication. So I was very fortunate with the employer that I had at the time. They paid for me to have a formal diagnosis of ADHD, which is very, and great. And so I had a formal diagnosis of ADHD, which I'll do another video about that. But that was quite an emotional thing to have, it dragging up past and struggles and all sorts of personal stuff. And then having that formal diagnosis was like, okay, I've got this piece of paper, it's an email, but I've got this piece of paper that says about this condition that I've struggled with all my life, and that's why. And now I'm in the process of getting medication. So then I went back to my GP, said, I've got this diagnosis, I want to go for medication. Inevitably, there's a huge waiting list and there's lots of faffing, and the NHS that I love dearly and has saved the life of my children. But, yes. And obviously ADHD is not life-threatening, so I get that. But it's frustrating. So I had at the point of recording this, I've had my first interview with the team that will deal with the medication. It was sort of frustrating that they hadn't really read my initial report from my diagnosis, and they asked exactly the same questions again. I had to fill out another form, and basically all I did was copy. I wrote to them and said, I've done this already. I can literally send you a huge document, a report from a reputable clinic that's diagnosed my ADHD, and you can just read that. And they're like, no, we want you to fill out this form, which was exactly the same question. So I literally went back, copy, paste, and I half hour copy, paste. And I was like, why am I? So frustrating. Anyway, I had this interview with this GP, and I said you could have read all these questions, you could have read the report, but that's fine. He was quite helpful. So the point of recording this, I'm now just waiting for me to have the second interview, which will be all about medication and getting on medication. For quite a number of years, I sort of had this weird idea that medication was like really bad for ADHD, and I think I focused quite a lot on like the system should adapt itself to dealing with neurodivergence rather than the neurodivergent person having to adapt themselves to fit into this sort of archaic Victorian structure. And I think there's some truth in that. But what I sort of missed, I think, quite a lot, and particularly as an adult, is that like the constant noise and confusion that ADHD people can face, and just calming that down. And that's sort of what I want from medication. I want to be able to have a conversation with people and not getting easily distracted and looking all over the place and stuff like that. I want to be able to focus on tasks. I want to be able to like sleep without getting bored after two minutes and finding suddenly I need to do this task that I've not thought about at all. But suddenly that's really urgent, so that I do this other thing that's distracting me from cleaning my house, which I really need to do. Yeah. So there's little things. That's my rough story. Feel free to ask some questions, some comments, ring the bell, all that stuff that people do. It'd be fun to grow this channel, I think. I'd like to grow the channel and see where it goes. Hope that's helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.